Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So you won't have been able to escape the presence of legendary filmmaker Martin Scorsese on social media lately. Not only because of his new film, The Irishman, which is what I'm here to talk about, but also his rather divisive comments about the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, which he's compared to theme parks. Can't necessarily say I agree with him, but hey, he's from a certain generation of filmmakers who no doubt were looked down upon and sneered by established filmmakers at the time that Scorsese rose to prominence. So, the shoe can always be on the other foot, frankly. But frankly, I'm not interested in that. Opinions opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. Everyone thinks theirs doesn't stink. So I'm not interested to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the status of Martin Scorsese as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, which is further affirmed by the presence of his new movie, The Irishman, which is getting a limited theatrical release in the UK before going on in November, before going on to Netflix at the end of November. I was lucky enough to go to a preview screening beamed from the premiere at the London Film Festival recently. So it's based on the novel I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt, which is basically recounts the story of the eponymous Irishman Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, in his first collaboration with Scorsese since Casino in 1995, which is a film that I absolutely love and I think is really underrated. And essentially, it's a sprawling kind of opus, like 4 hours. So it's a very, very long film about Frank Sheeran's kind of falling into a very tricky situation between the mob, personified in this case by an atypically reserved and very quiet Joe Pesci, and also union leader Jimmy Hoffa, played by Al Pacino, who is, in the words of the movie, was described as being as famous as Kennedy at the time in the early 1960s. And Jimmy Hoffa was a sort of famously very, very divisive character who kind of mysteriously disappeared. No one quite knows what happens to him. And this new movie, The Irishman, kind of mixes fact and fiction. It takes a speculative angle as to what might have happened to Hoffa, although one has to take that part of the story probably with a pinch of salt, since it's not guaranteed. But the real crux of the story is Robert De Niro, and what this really proves is that really De Niro has needed sort of Scorsese in his life for the best part of 20 years. Maybe it's the absence of a brilliant collaborator like Scorsese that has led to all of these frankly terrible Robert De Niro movies over the last 20 years. It is astonishing that as soon as these guys get back together, fireworks ensue in the manner of Casino or Taxi Driver or Goodfellas or Raging Bull or Mean Streets. They have a kind of kinship with each other. But the interesting thing is the emotional maturity present in both De Niro's performance in this and also present in Martin Scorsese's direction. I mean, clearly they are both not getting any younger. And the movie itself is an almost kind of commentary on that. It's a movie about aging, although famously the film starts with a de-aged De Niro, de-aged via CGI, as the younger Frank Sheeran. That only occupies part of the narrative. The vast bulk of the movie is actually about Sheeran getting older and realising that his loyalties between the mob and Jimmy Hoffa put him in a very, very compromising situation. The titular phrase, I heard you paint houses, is a euphemistic phrase that refers to the fact that Sheeran kills people on behalf of the mob. And it's actually, the movie actually packs a surprising emotional wallop. It's very, very steadily paced. This is important. Don't go in expecting something like Goodfellas, which is, obviously one of the greatest films of all time. I don't need to point that out to you. But Goodfellas was very, very brash, very energetic. It had this kind of like barreling energy to it. This movie, The Irishman, derives its power from the fact of how quiet it is, how deliberate it is, about the very, very sort of calm shots of an implacable Robert De Niro contemplating the sum total of his life and contemplating the sum total of the people that he's managed to fall in with. And it's very, very moving. And you see the personal and sort of spiritual decline, really, of this main character, and where it leads him, like the problems that it causes with his family, namely with his daughter, who's played by as a grown up by Anna Paquin, and it's really good. I mean, I suppose in that sense, it probably owes more to the mature, contemplative Martin Scorsese of Silence. There are actually a lot of comparisons to be made between this and Silence. The tone is very similar. It's very quiet. It's very brooding, and it's clearly a sign of a filmmaker reflecting back on the fact that he is aging and reflecting back on and sort of subverting what we've come to expect from a Martin Scorsese movie. I mean, you don't get, there are the needle drop tracks, but certainly, you know, that you don't get the kind of brash use of like Rolling Stones all the way through it like you would get in say like Mean Streets or Goodfellas or The Departed. This is very, very steady. And the actual moments of violence are actually relatively infrequent. Well, there are moments of violence, and they are very shocking and they are very explosive. But it's a 4-hour movie, and they're very, very carefully doled out. Again, this is a movie about a man who has made who made a very, very specific choice in his life and ultimately pays for it spiritually. Again, this is where I make the comparison to Silence. Robert De Niro is brilliant. This is the best performance that he's done in a very, very long time. Again, it makes one lament the fact that he hasn't worked with Scorsese for so long. Joe Pesci is brilliant for the reasons that you don't expect. He is very dignified. He never raises his voice once. But in this, Joe Pesci has basically become those kind of older, powerful gangster figures that you saw on the fringes of movies like Casino, the one that sat around the dinner table. Joe Pesci has basically become the character who doesn't have to raise his voice in order to exert power. He simply has power. He just needs to snap his fingers and someone will get killed on his behalf. And that's really interesting to watch. Again, a lovely way of sort of subverting Joe Pesci's screen persona. I mean, Al Pacino is as brash and as volcanic as you would expect as Jimmy Hoffa. But again, there are subtleties there, which is a testament to how well Martin Scorsese is able to get more out of his actors than maybe other directors do, because you see the bravado and the masculinity stripped away from Jimmy Hoffa very, very steadily as he realises that, you know, his actions are coming up against the force of the mob and this is potentially putting his life in danger. That's very powerful to see Al Pacino actually playing a man who is compromising. You can't just shout his way through it. He is actually in a compromising position. It's a really effective film. It is long. It is demanding. But I think that the reason why it works is because it is almost the opposite of what we expect from Scorsese. And yet, me saying that, I kind of think, well, is it the opposite of what we expect? Clearly, as filmmakers move into the twilight years of their career, one might imagine they get more ruminative and more thoughtful. And certainly that's what Scorsese has done here. I think it's almost certainly one of the best films he's made in his career. It's certainly one of the most thoughtful. It's clearly very, very personal. I mean, this has been a passion project that he's been trying to get off the ground for years, just as Silence was a passion project that took years and years to get off the ground. So regardless of Martin Scorsese's very divisive and difficult comments about Marvel, if you're a fan of cinema and you're a fan of his films, I can't urge you enough to go and check this out. Again, as I said, it's getting a limited theatrical release at the start of November. It's coming out on Netflix in the UK on the 27th of November, I believe. You have to brace yourself for how long it is, but it is worth the effort because you will be hit with an unexpected knockout punch from a movie that deals with a lot of underhand, seedy, like gangster characters. It's called The Irishman, and if your plan is going to see it, drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Bye.